Good evening, everybody. We're live now. This is Deborah Jones, your Blue Table Talk host. Thank you for coming on tonight with us. It is a great night tonight. I am super excited about our guests tonight, and with two of my favorite people. So we're gonna talk about them later, and so let's get into what our little housekeeping here tonight. So don't forget, we are in early voting right now. Beaumont needs a mayor. The two people who are running for mayor are Robin Mouton and also Roy Guest. So go out and exercise your right to vote. If you just graduated from high school and you're 18 years of age and you've already registered to vote, please, parents, get them out there and tell them to go vote. We need to push these children right now and push everybody out to vote, because voting is very essential especially in our race. We have Robert Gibbons. We have Robert Mouton, who has been with us for a while as a city councilman, and now she's running for mayor. She's been excuse me, she's been mayor pro tem twice. So look like she knows her job, right? So let's push out. Go ahead and vote for the candidate of your choice, and we're here from Monday through Saturday from 8 o'clock to 5, and next week it'll be from 7 to 7. And then on June 19th, which is Juneteenth for African Americans, we celebrate our emancipation. Juneteenth is actually our election day. So let's go out and vote. Do what we were taught to do, and that was to exercise our rights. Okay, so let's do what we need to do. And I'm gonna say good morning, good afternoon to this is my cousin, y'all. This is Nathan Johnson. Hi, Nathan. How are you tonight?
Hey, I'm pretty good. How are you?
I am great. We're waiting for one more guest to come on. He's gonna be a little late, but he'll be on a little while. But while he's not here, I'm having Nathan go ahead and introduce himself and just tell us a little something about yourself.
Okay, I think I missed the last of what you said. So hopefully y'all can hear me and it's still
Okay,
going.
here you go. I'm back again. I actually went out. Did you know that? Did you notice that?
Oh yeah, I didn't know what was happening.
I actually went out, but I'm back on, and so DeAndre just told me he's logging on right now. So let's see. Okay, so let's try this again. So just tell me what do you do, Nathan? What your job and everything.
Okay, so I'm Nathan. My pronouns are he, him, his. That's something we typically start with in the community at events. And I am a research coordinator for Baylor College of Medicine at Texas Children's Hospital. I work in adolescent HIV research. And that's about it here.
How long have you worked there?
I've worked there for just over 2 years. It was 2 years in February. And outside of my paid job, I'm on the board of a local nonprofit called Gender Infinity that has local events for families with transgender children. And we also have an annual conference to educate doctors, mental health specialists, lawyers, educators, and families and allies and things like that. So I'm on the board of directors, and I'm also the youth programming coordinator. So any event that we have youth come to, I find people to come in and lead activities and things like that. And yeah.
Yeah. So you have a lot of you wear a lot of hats.
I try to.
Well, great. But you said something about transgender children. What do you mean?
Okay, so we're gonna get into that now.
Well, I mean, that was, that was in your conversation. So just now, and I'm like, what? Go ahead.
Okay, so people that are transgender, people like myself, are people that do not identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. So for me, my birth certificate had an F on it, but that is not how I felt. That's not the experience that I. That's not the experience I had growing up. And so when I was about 17, I realized I was trans, and started to transition into the man that I am now. And so the families that I work with have kids who have experiences like mine, and they range in age from 3 years old to 21, the oldest kids that we see. Um,
Okay. Okay. Now we have, guess who just popped in? My another one of my favorite, DeAndre Moore. Hey, DeAndre.
Hey, sorry that I was a little late. Work ran over,
That's
but
okay.
how are y'all?
We're great. We're just introducing ourselves. That we hadn't gotten into anything. We're just introducing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like I learned so much just that fast from Nathan alone about who he is. So bravo, bravo. A pleasure, Nathan.
Thank you,
Bravo.
thank you.
Cool.
So
So
now
what's up?
we're waiting for you to introduce yourself, DeAndre.
Sure. My name is DeAndre Moore. I currently am residing in Dallas, Texas, originally from Beaumont, Texas. I moved to Dallas from Houston, where I spent the last 4.5 years doing a lot of work. I currently am also someone who works in the field of public health and HIV specifically. I work for a global organization called Prevention Access Campaign, which is the founding organization that founded U equals You. I am their United States partnerships and community engagement manager. So I oversee all of our partnerships here in the US. U equals You was a term that was coined by this organization about this year makes 5 years. What that means is that a person living with HIV who is on their treatment and has an undetectable viral load cannot sexually transmit HIV to their partners under any circumstances. It's impossible. So this kind of shows about how far our advancements have come. I also work part time with Dallas Southern Pride here in Houston. I mean, here in Dallas, who is getting ready to put on our huge Juneteenth festival next weekend. We have people like Lil Kim, Rick Ross, Erica Badu, so many other people that will be here. I'm handling their social media and marketing for the organization here. And yeah, and I wear a few other hats as well. Ambassador for the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation, which is kind of self-explanatory. It's the foundation that Elizabeth Taylor herself started. Now her grandchildren and a few other of her trustees now run the organization and manage the day-to-day activities for that global organization as well.
Okay,
So,
so both of you have wear big hats. Just y'all just doing y'all thing. That's all I can say. So
yeah.
with that being said, this is Pride Month. So you guys, y'all, we celebrate Pride Month in what form of fashion? Y'all
Oh.
have parades. Uh,
I think okay, I think it just depends. Usually, there's so many different things when people think about Pride Month. Pride is just another a way for persons of the LGBTQ plus community to be very visible. Some places do have the capacity to do parades. I know this year it's gonna be a little different because of COVID still, and then the same as last year.
right.
But we're moving forward to moving into that. It's a place where people of our community, of our experience, can go and feel safe. It's a safety area. And it's not just a one-time thing. Some places put on events all month. Some places put on events just once a week. Again, it just depends on the capacity in which the city and the organizations had to put on. For me personally, Pride was the first time I went somewhere. I accidentally ended up at a Pride, and it was Chicago's Pride. I think I was 20 years old. I was going to Chicago to go see a friend, not knowing that it was Pride. And I got on the train, and everybody's wearing rainbows. I'm like, what's going on? And I make it down to the area which is known as Boys Town, which is what, if you're in the community, you know what a gayborhood is. It's like a neighborhood, but it's the gayborhood where it's where all the gay bars are, where you'll find all the people from the community at. So I went to the gayborhood in Chicago, and I had went the night before, and it was like it took me seconds to get from one block to the next. This day, it took me about 10 minutes just to get from one block to the next because you have 2 million people on one street standing up for a parade. And I was a little afraid because there was so many people that were like me. And it was my first time being in such a setting where it was so big. But then I felt so comfortable, and it was so freeing. It was so liberating to have a space where I could be myself, free of judgment, and so forth. And yeah, when I think about personally, when I think about pride, I also think about families and family dynamics. And so in the community, we have things that we call our gay families, which is like a family away from our biological family. Like I have siblings who I consider like my brothers and sisters in the community who I'm actually closer to than my own biological siblings. I have my gay brothers who I hear I love you from almost every day, as opposed to sometimes my own siblings who I may never hear from. And that's why a lot of people actually do explore gay families or new families, is because we don't, or they don't get the acceptance from their own biological families. You'd be surprised at how many kids get put out of their house for coming out as queer, as gay, or as trans. It's not the easiest thing. And I think that, Pride Month is a month that we get to be who we want to be, who we are, and be unapologetic about it, right? Like we get to, Pride is a space for us, and it can't be, regulated or policed by anyone else. It's just a safe space. Nathan, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take up too much time, but there you go, Nathan.
No, absolutely everything DeAndre said, and also Pride is also a celebration of our history. Um, just like we as Black people have our history, we as LGBTQ people have our history. And in the community, you'll hear, certain groups of people say that the first Pride was a riot, and that's absolutely true. A lot of the, civil unrest that we had um, last year in our country, some of those same things have happened in the queer community. So Pride is a time for us to look back at that, see where we have been, and see where we still need to go, and celebrate all parts of our history.
Right.
And
What?
one of the things, oh,
Go ahead, baby.
no,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to piggyback on what Nathan just said is that also what I feel is that like even within the LGBTQ community, there are still certain subgroups or dynamics that are sometimes left out and not centered as much as they should be. So like for instance, the trans community, I think should be one of the top priorities that should be centered around when we're talking about Pride, because that riot that Nathan is talking about was started by a Black trans woman, Marsha P.
Right.
Johnson. It started because Marsha P. Johnson was not welcomed into a bar, and we had police officers who were trying to police where we could go. Well, Marsha had enough, and she took a brick and threw it into the Stonewall bar at the time in New York, and that's what began the riots, the Stonewall riots. Was it 1969? I believe, yeah,
Yep.
1969. Yeah, yep, yep. And so that's what started it all. So when you think about Pride and how far we've come, just like most movements, this was started by a Black person, a Black trans woman started this movement, and it's always been led by people of color to see us where we are. And a lot of it has become whitewashed. I'm not afraid to say that. I think that when we look at Pride today, it's become very um,
Commercial.
very commercialized, right? And it's also disheartening because these big organizations have found a way to capitalize off of something else that wasn't theirs, right? So you have all these organizations that come out June 1st at midnight. You get every big corporation possible puts out their rainbow gear. Coach put out rainbow this. Nike has their rainbow pride, just be you campaign, all these things. But how much of that money is actually being invested into LGBTQ
Yeah.
communities of color, right? And so that's a little bit disheartening, is that we have to live with, yeah, they're going to make a lot of money off of this Pride Month, but how much of that actually goes back into the communities in which actually need it and that can be served.
Right. Okay, so I don't want to step on anybody's foot, but I want to know, and if I am stepping on your foot, I apologize, and you just erase that question, okay? But what is the acronym for LGBTQ, and which one do you represent?
So it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. It's also been to some people also say the Q means questioning. So I have literally been every single one of those letters throughout my journey. So uh, I well, we'll talk about like history probably a little later, but currently, I identify as a queer trans man, and so to me, the trans part is important, and for other people, it may not be, but at this point in my life, it is. And I know what queer means is like a later question, so um, actually, no, I will talk about it now.
Yes, I
Um,
get it, get it.
so um, for me, that's more than it's about more than my sexuality. It's about more than who I'm attracted to.
Right.
It's about like how I move through the world,
Mhm.
my political views, my ideas, my values. Um, yeah, and so and that's like not to say that that's an original concept. You know, in those early gay liberation movements that we were talking about earlier. Queer was also a political identity to them as well. So I'm not like reinventing the wheel or anything. But for me, it's more than just about who, um, yeah, I'm attracted to.
Right. Right. Awesome.
So yeah, same for me. Yeah, I've identified with the gay, the bisexual, and now I consider myself a queer man because it's so much more than just sexuality for me, and even just exploring that is because I know that I've also been with trans men as well, so not just cis hetero men, and that experience is a lot different. And it also is like you said, like it's a part of our walk, our talk, the way that we carry ourselves. You know, some queer men, I mean, some black gay men might not consider themselves feminine at all. I know that for my style, the way that I am, I would consider myself a butch queen. Like I dress, I'm all into the fashions. My fashions don't have a sense of gender identity. Who knows? You might catch me in some fitted jeans or some loose jeans one day. You don't know. I think that um, yeah, Nathan pretty much put it all into perspective about what it means to be a queer person. And also for me is also being very much a feminist as well, wrapped up in my queer identity is to push for, you know, women, black queer women, black trans women and so forth to be included across all spectrums and have equality in the way that which we haven't seen before yet. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go to my audience because I do have see one question out there, and I'm gonna bring it to you. They want, and this is one of my questions also. Is that what is the difference between gay and queer? Joanne wants to know.
yeah. So yeah, you want me to take it start off, Nathan?
Yeah, go
Okay,
for
yeah.
it.
So for me, the difference we're talking about someone who is gay, that's just speaking to their sexual identity, or sexual orientation. I'm sorry, not identity, their sexual orientation. And so like that's normally we talk about a gay person. You're if we're being technical, you're talking about a gay male figure who is attracted to the same sex. When we're talking about queer, it could be the same thing, but it can also be it's more than just sexual orientation or sexual identity because a female can be identified as queer as well, right? A trans person can identify as queer as well. It just means that for me, it means that I'm very sexually fluid and who I engage with, but also that like there's a lot of femininity in me as well. Like I can't be labeled as just this a straight, I mean, a gay male, a gay man. Like it's so much more to that because there are things that I might do that some men might feel is just not appropriate for a man to do or whatever. You know, those heteronormative things and so forth. And so for me, it's a little bit. It's about the way I carry myself, the the me going make sure that I got shellac on my nails, like I get my nails done every other week, all that kind of stuff. It's the way that I talk to people, I convey my messaging and all that kind of stuff. And it's not done in a way in which would be deemed normal by heterosexuals or by a straight man and so forth. So that's my own expression of what it means to be queer. Yeah, Nathan.
So, all right, I feel like this is a tough question to answer because there's so many different angles to go about it. So I agree with DeAndre. I do think in some ways gay is like a very specific identity. And like, yeah, when we talk about the acronym LGBTQ, I think there's a separation. It's understood that there's a separation between the L and the G, meaning lesbians are gay women, but the G specifically refers to gay men. Um, but I do think it can get a little confusing because I think within the community, we can sometimes use gay as just like a lazy catch-all. So like, especially like with friends and stuff, we might just, you know, like refer to. I mean, I for simplicity's sake, I might just say, "Oh, my like that's my gay friend" or something like that. But I don't think I would ever actually say that. But anyway, but yeah. But then again, like we were talking about, queer is not just a specific identity. It can definitely be someone's specific identity, but um, it's it's bigger,
Mhm.
basically.
Right. You know, both the guys back in, I grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Okay, so back then it was all this was hidden. It didn't come out. So of course we had people back there that were lesbians and gays and whatever, but it wasn't talked about because it was just kept under the carpet. When it finally came out in the 70s, everybody was like in awe, knowing that, this person was that way or this person was that way. And I remember one time, I'm gonna take it to myself. I remember one time I was driving down the street. Now we had a gay bar in downtown Beaumont. It was across the street from Shepherd Laundry, or probably on the same side as Shepherd Laundry. And so this guy was crossing the street, and I didn't know it was a man. They had a dress. He had a dress on, and so he was crossing the street, and I was going to the club. Me, I be going to the club, and so He was at this bar, this gay bar that he said it was, and so I almost hit him. And so when I stopped to talk to him, it was my friend, which I had no idea of knowing, and I'm like, oh my God, why are you in a dress? It was just crazy, I mean, y'all drove to the club crying because I had no idea that this was going on. And then later on, he was gay. He was a minister. He was a pastor. Let's put it like that. And but the thing about it was all new to us. We didn't know anything about it. So I think it started really coming out in the 70s. That's my take on it. That really start coming out of seven, and we either accept you or we don't. And that was,
Yeah.
like I said, that was my friend. Of course, I'm accepting my friend. That's my
Yeah.
friend. You know, yes, was he a pastor of the church? Spreading the word, giving God's word. That's my friend. He was doing it. Telling, he was saying what God said and what the Bible said and everything. But like I said, it came out of the 70s. We just didn't know. Now it's open. It's wide open. So what do y'all take on that one?
I think that you have to think about, like, so it's really funny you said the 70s because we saw the riots began in 1969, right? So that's what kind of set things off. Same thing as we see now, and today is like the whole Black Lives Matter movement and stuff, right? Like this is something that's happened before back in the early 60s and so forth, died down a little bit, and now here we are fighting the same thing again. It's become very much a prevalent issue again in today's society. I think that things were very hidden before because people were so afraid of dying. Like coming out and in this community at one point meant also a death sentence. You, especially in the South, right? If you think about Texas, it was very much a death sentence. I know people who would have rather come out. At one point, I would have rather come out and tell my parents that I had just committed murder than I would have saying that I was gay. I would have felt so much better. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. Okay, you did this. That's fine. But coming out as gay, especially in a Black religious household, wasn't always the easiest thing because we hear certain things growing up, right? And that's always been an issue. But I think that today, for me, where I am in my life, I'm not necessarily looking for acceptance because I don't care. Your acceptance of me or not is not going to stop my bag. I'm still going to go to work. I'm going to still make my money. And I'm going to live my life for who I want to be. It's just more about a respect thing for me is that respect me the same way that I'm going to respect you. Because
Right.
whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, I'm probably somewhere fighting for you the same way I would hope that you would fight for me and my rights to be here as
Right.
well. And so that's one of the things that people don't realize is that as people who are of the most, marginalized communities, we get out there and fight for people. It's the work that we do a lot of the time is always free or underpaid. We get out there, we fight so women can have right and access to their bodies, and we're fighting legislators out here to ensure that our world is safer for Black and brown men and women and so forth. And it's just like we're used to living in a society where it's not always reciprocated from our heterosexual brothers, partners, or whomever they may be out there. But yeah, things have changed. Times have changed, and
Mhm.
people are starting to own who they were. I think that back then, the 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, and beyond, the same amount of people that are queer and gay and so forth now were then too.
But
They
then too.
just
Right,
they just could not come out about it. You'd be
right.
surprised at how many of your friends and family who are
Yeah,
living at home, what we consider to be down low.
right.
Um, uh, yeah, I won't out or say anybody or anything like that, but it's always funny when I go home, and even just like me personally, just going into the church house, like sitting around and seeing how many people who I know have either been in my inbox or flirted with me, but are sitting there with their wives. And so it's always the funniest thing for me. But yeah, I think some people, and still today, it's a decision. I don't try to pressure anybody into coming out, because coming out for you, it might be different than it was for me. My family, luckily, still around, but for you, for some whoever's watching, if they decide like I want to come out, be careful, because you might lose your family. That's just how it is. It's unfortunate. They might not understand. They might not want to be there for you, and you're gonna have to struggle and deal with that.
Right.
Unfortunately, but there are people who are out there like myself, and I'm sure like Nathan, who'll be ready to be there for you and with you and so forth.
Here's a statement. Statement here says, "Hello, Deborah, Nathan, and DeAndre. First, it is nice to meet you both. I hope that you don't mind me asking a couple of questions. Number one, I heard you saying that you felt closer to your LGBTQ families than relatives. I excuse me, I hate that for you. Was it because they did not accept you, your identified lifestyle, and disagreed, or was it that there was no love there regarding your lifestyle?"
Nathan, do you want to answer? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I could answer that. Although I wasn't the one that made that
Yeah, no,
statement.
I was gonna.
But,
I talked so much this last time. I wanted to give you a chance to talk. Go ahead.
yeah, no, it's totally fine. Yeah, so I didn't make that statement, but I do know that that's true for a whole lot of LGBTQ people. For me, I would say not closer, but as close. And like um, we don't have to talk about the whole blood is thicker than water, whatever. But
Mhm.
I don't necessarily agree with that. But for me, I've been fortunate enough that like they're all fantastic connections. So what was my point?
Did your
uh,
did your
Having
family?
both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I would say I definitely underestimated my parents. So like DeAndre, I grew up in the church. My dad is a preacher. Even though I had never met him, my mom's dad was a preacher. I always tell people that like basically there are two family businesses in my family. You're either preachers or teachers. Um,
Hmm.
and so knowing that, I like DeAndre, I thought I knew what the reaction was going to be from hearing all this other stuff. Hearing other people, I thought I knew what my parents' feelings were. Um, but when I was in fifth grade, my oldest brother from just my dad came out to them when he came to visit. And so that was like, I guess, the first gay person that I knew. Um, and as far as I knew, my parents were really accepting of it. Not as far as I knew, like I know they were. And so, but still, that doesn't necessarily make it any easier. I didn't even really know that I had anything to think about at that point. But in high school, I could recognize that I had a crush on a girl for the first time that I could recognize. And so at first, originally, I came out as bi. And yeah, it was it was tougher with my mom, I think, because we had a really close relationship. And she had asked me about feelings before, and I didn't know how to process those feelings. So when it came down to it, I know, she felt like, um, I guess I guess she felt I trusted her more, but it wasn't like a matter of trust. It was just like not even really knowing myself. But um, I mean, after that, it was just kind of, I don't know who I was. Like it was not a thing in my family. And then a few years later, when I realized I was trans, um, again, even though we had gone through them already accepting me, it was still like a struggle. I still had to work up to it. This time I couldn't even tell them face to face. I wrote them a letter and then went to go hang out with friends. Um, and then, yeah, I don't know. Um, Finding out that your child almost is not who you know your child to be, I would assume is much heavier of a weight than just finding out who your child is attracted to. Um, so I get that that was a much slower process, but it did lead to like a very good place. And same with my friends that I knew from high school before I transitioned. They're all still my friends now. And all the people that I've met since, I've been really, really fortunate. Um, but I do know that so many people, like DeAndre said, um, experience losing their families of origin, which some people say. So families of origin versus chosen families. Um, but yeah, and so DeAndre, I don't know if you want to add on there.
Yeah, yeah, I can add to it. Yeah, I think that for a lot of people, when they first come out, like because of family dynamics and so forth, and because they haven't been able to be raised or be taught to love people for who they are, no matter what, they don't know how to accept that, hey, my sibling or my child or somebody is different than what I expected. I think one of the biggest mistakes that parents make is something that my pops always tell me is that if you don't ever have any expectations for people, you'll never be disappointed. Well, our parents often put expectations for us. They want us to have a certain career. They want us to look a certain way. They want us to have a family. They want us to have kids and all these kind of things. But that might not be what I want, or it might look a little different for me to get there as it was for the plans that our parents had for us. So I think that that was one thing. Uh, for me coming out at first, it was so much easier for me to be more open with everybody who wasn't a part of my family than it was with my own family because I was afraid of some of the judgment because of the things that I had heard. Like in all honesty, like I'd heard certain things. I had cousins, a sister who had come out and got married, and so forth. And I saw the way in which they were not as welcomed around,
Mm-hmm.
and I was afraid for that from to happen for me because I'm very family oriented. Like I love all of my family so much, my extended family as well. Like it's gotten to the point I've gotten into it with other family about why we can't do gatherings some more anymore like the way that we used to. But for me, when I came out, I was very intentional about the fact that like this is who I am, this is who I'm gonna be, and you're gonna love me. Like there is no getting rid of me. Like I'm gonna be around. I don't care, y'all. If I make you uncomfortable or something, you're gonna have to move. I'm not gonna change who I am or closet who I am for someone else. And so same thing, kind of like I can like, I have an older biological sibling, who is 9 years older than me. We were raised with same household, but very different. Things change. Times change almost a decade later. And I love my brother to death. And I know that my brother loves me. But our relationship, I think because of our age difference and because of who I am as a queer person kind of makes things a little different. So I might not always hear from that sibling, but I have my siblings who are here in Dallas and some in Houston who I consider like part of my gay family who I call them right now. If I call somebody right now and say, look, I ain't got no food in my house. I can't eat. I don't have anything. They're going to say, okay, be outside in 15 minutes. I'm going to take you to the grocery store. You're going to be good. You're going to be fine. Like there are people who I can literally rely on as blood brothers and sisters, who we come from different, like, parents and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Something else you said, Nathan, that I wanted to touch on that I cannot quite remember it struck a nerve and I wanted to add to it, but I forgot. Anyways, I agree with everything Nathan has said, though, and so forth. Is that it could be for a number of reasons. That the shunning away has not been my story. Like my parents have still been there, very welcoming for me to be around and so forth. And my family has also, been very welcoming for me. Again, I really didn't get much of an option. I'm going to be here. But for some, I know a lot of people who have been put out of their homes and had literally nowhere to go because they came out as queer, because they came out as trans or anything. I know so many young adults and young persons who have acquired HIV because they got put out of their homes and because they had to sleep with other people just to have a roof over their head. Survival sex is a thing. People engage in that, especially young queer people engage in it all the time. Because we get put out of our houses and we have nowhere to go, we might meet a predator who literally just wants sexual favors from us, but is going to provide me with a house, with a roof over my head. That's really what I need right now. And so that's the kind of things that happen is when our families turn us away, we have to go out into the streets and figure out how to survive. And we got to just use what we got, or they have to use what they have to make it work and figure it out. And so it becomes a cycle And I hope that there are family members who are watching who can attest to, like, you know what, maybe I did turn my back on someone before who you could have been there for because of their sexual identity or because of their sexual orientation, and will say, I'm going to go find that person or look for them and see what I can do to be an ally and help them, because you'd be surprised how much one phone call could really save a life.
Yeah.
And how much that person could literally be on the verge of literally giving up, because they feel that they are too different or they're not welcome somewhere and so forth.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You brought up HIV. Is HIV and AIDS the same thing, or is it different?
HIV and AIDS are two very different things. One is a virus and one is a disease. So HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus, and then AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And so a person who has HIV might not ever reach an AIDS diagnosis, because I was able to catch it in time before it reached to be the level of AIDS. And so I don't want to use the term full blown AIDS. That makes absolutely no sense. It's either AIDS or it's not. So a person who has AIDS means that they have less than 200 copies of T cells, functioning T cells in their body. So an average person with a healthy immune system without HIV or anything is going to have anywhere between 750 to, I think, 1,000 or 1,100 T cells in their body. That's what you need to fight off viruses and everything. What HIV does is it goes in and it attacks those T cells and it kills them. And so once you start breaking those down, once you get below 200 copies of T cells in your body, that's when you're receiving AIDS diagnosis. When I was diagnosed, I had 500 copies of T cells in my body. Now that's gotten all the way back up to almost 1,000. But there are some people who, when they go and they get diagnosed, they already have less than 200 copies of T cells, so they receive an AIDS diagnosis. So they're very different. Although in order to get an AIDS diagnosis, you have to have had HIV first. And so it doesn't necessarily mean it just speaks to the level of how um, much the virus, how much time or how it has attacked your immune system, and
Mhm.
how far it's gone, basically, and then where you are. But if a person receives an AIDS diagnosis, does not mean that they can't reach undetectable status. I know people who have received AIDS diagnosis who have still been able to reach undetectable statuses where they cannot transmit HIV or the AIDS virus, or their AIDS diagnosis to anyone else.
Did you
So yeah,
want
they're two
to?
different. You got anything to add, Nathan?
Uh, no, just that, which basically you alluded to, that even if you do at some point have less than 200 T cells, you can recover those if you stay adherent to your
Mm-hmm.
antiretroviral therapy.
Yeah, yeah. So I encourage anyone, and also, like, the thing is, like, it's still like a lot of stigma around HIV and AIDS as it relates to the LGBTQ community. Is that HIV and AIDS are not, they're not an LGBTQ thing, an issue or disease. I know probably just as many straight Black women who have HIV as I do folks in the queer community. Um, so I think it's imperative that people who think that, like, they might not be at risk or anything, if you're sexually active and you aren't always using protection, you're just as much at risk as I am or as anybody else is. And so just make sure that folks go out there, get tested. A lot of places offer free testing in various communities. You can literally just Google free HIV testing, depending on where you are. Legacy is a big place. I know in Houston and in Beaumont, Legacy Community Health that provides testing for HIV and other STDs as well.
And just to add on to that, while Black and Hispanic men who have sex with men, still account for the majority of HIV diagnosis, Black and Hispanic straight women are right behind them. So yeah, like DeAndre was saying, it's not at all an LGBTQ issue, but it does still very much impact our community.
Yeah.
So is it different in men than in women, or what?
Hmm.
No.
It's the same. It's the virus is the virus. It's gonna attack your body the exact same way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's the same virus. It attacks humans the exact same way. I think that one of the biggest things why it's still so much associated heavily with the LGBTQ community is because those were the folks who were dying literally every day, every minute at one point. So if you think about it, from the early 80s to the late 90s, I know I have people in this field who have been working since the beginning in this field who would tell you, I've lost over 100 friends. I went to over 100 funerals in less than 2 years at one point. It was almost a funeral every day because people were dying, and the world didn't care because the world at one point they weren't accepting LGBTQ people, and so it was like, well, they're dying. That's not our business. It's not our problem. That's why our government, it took our government, our president at that time to so long to actually even speak on the issue of queer folks dying, because we weren't getting any help. And that's a pandemic that I think could have ended long ago had our government taken it just as serious as we did COVID-19.
Was that
The only
wrong?
difference,
That was
Wrong.
Reagan. Yeah, I was like, I don't know why
right?
you're like just
Yeah.
saying the president at the time. Say his name.
Yeah, I didn't want to say his name because I don't care about it like that. But yes, Reagan was there, and but it even carried over into Bush. Bush did
Right.
not handle it as much as Daddy Bush as he could have at the time. So first Bush, but yeah, so there was a lot of mishandling of this epidemic at the time, that I think that we could have seen it into if it had been straight white women dying of this disease, it wouldn't have made it out of the 80s. It'd be done. It'd have been done in the 80s. But that's not who it was. So
So so really there's not a cure for it, but but there's a pill that will slow it down, right?
there's a pill that will put it in a dormant state, as if
Right.
it's not there. It's literally as if it's not there. But if I don't continue taking my medication, adhering to it, then the virus in my body can build up resistance to the medication. So then that medication will stop working. So that's why it's important, like what Nathan said, is to adhere to your medication as prescribed by your doctors. And so if that means taking that pill once a day, every day, close to the same time, that's what you have to do. But we also are making advances now. I'm considering a new form of treatment. We have injectables where you can get an injection in your butt, 2 shots in your butt once a month. And that's it. You don't have to take pills. So we're moving forward in the medical field as far as advances go. They're even working to finally push out human trials for the HIV vaccine. So there is an actual vaccine now on the way, 40 years later. But yeah,
Do
it's
you,
just so it's amusing.
I'm listening to you. And how old were you when you were detected with HIV?
I was 19. Yes, I was a freshman. So that was 7 years ago. In
Okay.
April made 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, you look like you're 19 now.
I
So
know. That's why I need the beard bag. I wish I hadn't cut it now, but yes, I do look very much like a kid. But yeah, that was a while ago. But yeah, and there are my biggest challenge was at the time was probably like telling my family. And once I did that, it didn't matter to me who else knew. Like my mom was there. She's been like my biggest supporter. So everybody else, like whether you have a problem with it or not, I don't care. But I've not seen as much of an issue. What's funny is for me with dating, and I know I'm just kind of like going into it, is that I found it easier to date people who knew their status that were HIV negative than I did people who knew their status and were HIV positive,
right.
because I'm so out about my status. And so what they were afraid of, those who were also HIV positive, was that
You can
if
spread.
it came out that we were dating, if it came out that we were dating, then
Mhm.
people would automatically assume that they were HIV positive, but they weren't out about their status. So they didn't want anyone to know.
Right.
Those who were HIV negative, it was like, oh, it's fine because I'm actually negative, so I don't have anything to worry about. Like if people guess it, I could always say, no, I'm not positive. And so even there's some internalized stigma within our community too that we face because of just decades of stigma on stigma on stigma.
Right.
So
Hmm. What is how common are false negatives and false positives? How common is
um Nathan, do you have any statistics on that? I don't have anything.
Um, no. And I'm
It
realizing I probably had very easy access to that information.
right?
And
It's somewhere, but
yeah,
it's not as common as it used to be because of how far like technology has come. Like technology is very much
yeah,
spot on. That's why when people get a preliminary test, so whether it's a mouth swab or a finger prick, we use finger pricks now because it pulls a little bit of blood and it's a little bit more clarity.
yeah,
You still go get blood work to confirm. You still have to get a
yeah.
confirmatory test. My actual first test, I don't talk about it as often, but my actual first HIV test that I got, when I found out I was positive, was an oral test that I got in a nightclub the week before, and that came back positive. But I didn't want to, like, I was not accepting that until the blood work came back, and that's what confirmed it. So once you get the blood work, that's gonna be the all in all. You'll
right?
know.
So you get it through the semen or blood transfusion.
And you can, they don't really do that. So because of where we are now, blood transfusions don't really happen as often, at least in the US, because
Mhm.
they test it now. But it's usually through semen, vaginal secretions, breast milk, or any other bodily fluids that can be contracted through sexual contact, not saliva, not hugging, not kissing, none of that kind of stuff. No. But yeah.
Yeah, educate them because people need to be educated about this.
Mhm.
Even up to today, you
Yeah.
you would think that people would know more because it's been out so long now, and but they don't. It's like they don't want to know.
And they don't know, but I would say that not that they don't want to know, I would say that our school systems and like the education systems have failed us. Like in Texas, we very much still only teach abstinence only education. If that was working, we wouldn't see teen pregnancies. If that was working, we wouldn't see an increase of people 13 to 24 contracting STDs or HIV. What we need in our school systems is comprehensive and inclusive sex education in our public schools, which is something that this red state doesn't believe in, even though it believes in guns more than people. But I mean, that's another conversation. Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah. So for
Another
something else. But
podcast.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah. And it is really sad. I really do hope that, this kind of all ties into it. What we're talking about is also very much a human rights issues. Our issues are everybody's issues. And it's imperative that, people get out and get ready to go vote too. Because if you've seen nothing else from this legislative session, is that guns are more important to our legislators than women and their bodies and trans children and youth um, out there in our state. So that's a huge problem.
Right. Right. You want to add anything, Nathan?
Um, no, I think he covered it.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Let me go to our listeners. Let me see. Um, let's go over here. Say I love you, DeAndre Moore.
Oh,
You know that lady.
I do know that lady. That's my mom.
She also said thanks, Nathan.
Mhm.
And Joanne says we got you, DeAndre. Dolores says DeAndre Moore. I was there when you were born, and will always be there.
So
um,
they have us ask questions. Will they have any questions?
let's see. Let's see. I think I saw. Let me see. This is long. She says, not just in the LGBT community, we don't get to pick our families, but we choose those who are closer than blood families.
This is true. Bravo.
Okay, let's see.
Guys, that causes AIDS. Meds have
Yes,
helped curb this. Correct,
Yep.
Ursula.
right. Let me see what Kathy says. She says, I know going to speak with DeAndre has taught me a lot, but at the same time, it has disheartened to see thousands of guests there who cry because they don't support this. They don't have a support system, and that's what we need. We need a support
Yeah.
system. We need a support system for anything we do.
Literally.
Everything we do.
Yeah. It's a shame. I think that one of the biggest killers today is for LGBTQ persons is stigma. It's because of the stigma for people who don't know how to either accept or continue to love persons who um who come out as queer and part of the LGBTQ community. Rosa is right. There is a medicine that can prevent the spread of HIV. It's
Mm-hmm.
called PrEP, which stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis, and
Okay.
it's a one-a-day pill that anybody can get access to. It's intended for those specifically who are at high risk of contracting HIV for whatever reasons. But yes.
Ursula says, Kathy Wingate, do you agree that one can disagree with the lifestyle yet still have genuine love to the person, just as Christ loves us, yet doesn't always like who we are or the choices we make? So
She asked it to Kathy Wingate, but I
yeah,
I
so
think that I think I'm not gonna answer like that, but I think to Ursula, I think it's imperative to know that who we are is not a lifestyle. It's who we it's who. So that's one of the things. Language really does matter. It's like lifestyle is who you choose to be. I choose to live a lifestyle of luxury or to be broke or be poor, whatever that might be. That's a lifestyle. Who I am and how I identify as is not a lifestyle because I can't help it. It's not. It's just as much as we wake up and your skin is black in the morning. It's just how much I wake up, and I could choose a life of sadness and forced a forced lifestyle, which would mean that I'm out here and I would go find me this woman and do all things that I think would make other people happy. But then that's not a life for me, and that's not something that I would ever encourage anybody to do, because you wasted your life trying to please other people.
Yeah, so I agree. While my experience is not a choice, I do actively choose to present all of me in everything
Mm-hmm.
that I do.
Yep. Bravo.
Wow, yeah. But you know, a lot of people say that HIV is a gay disease. That's what do you guys take on that?
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, yeah. I know way too many people who are um not queer, even straight men. I know a lot of straight men and straight women who are not a part of the LGBTQ community, but would consider themselves allies, who are living with HIV just as much. If you ever get a chance to go to one of these conferences, you would see how much it is and how many more people there are.
So when we talk about down low people, and is that they don't want to come out right now? Is that what it is?
Maybe never.
And they may not never. Some download people, there are download people who have been married to persons of the opposite sex for years and for decades who would never come out. You'd be surprised. I hate to say this, but you'd be surprised at how many deacons that are within the church who would be considered DL because they would never ever come out publicly on their own, um, and so forth. But yeah, that's a thing. They're just on the down low. And then there are some people who truly believe in privacy for whatever reason. They think that it's who they lay down with or who they have sex with is more of a private thing, and they don't ever have to advertise it, so they don't identify with anything. They just identify as human, and that's okay too. Whatever works for them.
Right, right. Wow. Okay, is there anything else that you would like to talk about or emphasize? Any one of you guys? Both of you guys.
Mm-mm.
How much time do we have left?
Not much time left, but
Oh, well then I guess not, unless we're doing a part two. Because I
Look,
feel
okay,
like,
because we can keep going.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I just one of the things, like I said again, and just to reiterate, I consider myself like an accomplice to the trans community, is that we don't give enough space and enough like shedding light on trans issues and like the trans community. And I think it's because it's so foreign to so many people, because even internalized within the LGBTQ community, there's still a level of discrimination for our trans brothers and sisters. And it's either because people don't want to understand, that they don't understand genuinely, and they have yet to try to understand those experiences. But yeah, there's a thing too, is that the internalized phobias and discrimination is a thing within our own community, that we have to stop as well.
And I will have one thing to add, which is not at all really connected to what DeAndre was just talking about, but it just came in my mind. Um, to the comment earlier from Kathy Wingate talking about seeing DeAndre speak and being so moved by all the people that didn't have a support system. So before so I came out in 2010 as trans. That's when I realized. For the first 5 years, so at this point, over half of my transition, um, I just moved through the world as what in the community we call stealth, meaning I didn't tell people I was trans. I just let people assume that I was like any other guy. But after attending my first Gender Infinity conference in Houston in 2015, I got to interact with trans kids and their families for the first time. And it it's the first time that I really realized how privileged I am to have that support from my family. And so at that point, it became important to me. I felt I needed to be openly trans and to acknowledge that part of myself, and move through the world. Um, like I said, with every piece of me, because I think um, and at this point, like my parents come to all these events with me. They volunteer as much as I do. They're really involved, and so I think it's really, really important. I think parents need to see that being trans or being queer at all does not mean your child has to have a tragic life, and
Mm-hmm.
that you being there makes that difference. And so I think me being there and my parents being there, we're like living examples, especially as Black people, of the difference that needs to be made. Uh,
I can really speak for the both of you guys because I know both of you guys. Um, Let me go with Nathan first. Nathan is my first cousin. Deandra said, what? Child, this is my first cousin, child. And so it was when Uncle Dariel passed away, DeAndre, that his mom came to the funeral. And so she was sitting in my living room. And so and I said, well, where's Nathan? What happened? Where's everybody? So she says, and she said, I want some, I have something to tell you. And so she said, Nathan is, I can't remember if she used the word gay, trans, or what. And so I said, okay, so where is it? You tell me something, I don't care.
Where's yeah?
Where is it? And so, I said, that's his lifestyle. I don't care. And so he said, because he was afraid that you guys might not accept him. So we family. This is family. And Nathan, let me push over to DeAndre. DeAndre family too. When DeAndre, when his mom, when she mentioned it, when she told me, and then I saw DeAndre, I said, okay. He said, and Deborah did, my mama tell you? So I said, okay, yeah. And so I was like, I don't want you to, I don't know what you want me to say. That's your lifestyle. That's you. I love you guys, regardless of the fact, you family. And I'm going to accept you. I accepted you, especially Nathan, when you were born, and I'm accepting you now. DeAndre, you know how we drive. We know how we
Yes,
connect.
yes.
DeAndre gonna have me on Tyler Perry show one day.
One day. That's gonna be it. It's gonna be the Deborah Jones show, the Blue Table Talk on the OWN network. That's it.
I am super proud of both of you guys. Super proud
Thank you
of
so
because
much.
y'all have gone so far and y'all have done so much in your lifetime. You only been here for a short time.
Yeah.
How old are you, DeAndre?
I'm 26 now.
26. How are you, Nathan?
I just turned 29.
See, only for a short time, and you
4
have
years.
done a marvelous job in your life. You already have your support team. You already
Right.
have. So
Correct.
long as your family is here for you, whether you
That's
realize
it.
it or not, your family is here. So I think I had another question for you. Gwen Gray, who was Nathan's cousin, what do you suggest when a parent is in total denial when their child chooses an alternative lifestyle?
I would suggest that the parent starts to understand and look for understanding to know that that's not necessarily a choice for their child. For one, that's just who their child is. They just didn't know it. For whatever reason, that child may just did not feel comfortable coming out beforehand, before this moment. But I think that if a parent is in total denial, that part of the first thing to do is accept it for what it is, and then figuring out how you can be a better parent to this child. Um,
Yeah,
because those moments are a matter of life and death for a lot of us.
yeah.
And I'd say just listen, give them the space,
You do that.
um, and yeah, and just listen and let them, tell you whatever they have to tell you, and be open to honestly hearing it. Um, yeah, and just and hopefully the child will also know to be patient, and know that just as it took time for them to figure things out for themselves, it's going to take time for their parents to sit with it. But keep the conversation going. If your kid brings you something to read, be open to reading it, and just at least keep the lines of communication open.
Wow. You guys blew me away. And like I say, I love you guys, and if anything I can do for you guys, I'm here for you. This could go on and on and on. I promise you, because it's so interesting, and a lot of people don't really, to be honest, don't accept their family in their lifestyle. but you, like we said earlier, y'all support team is so large and so strong. You know, it's something to be proud of. It's something to really be proud of. So, with that being said, y'all want to close us out on something before I tell y'all this is my first year anniversary?
I just want to say I hope people choose love. Like that's something that's the most thing that you can be proud of, is to choose love and be there for those who value in your opinion and your love. Most importantly, just be there.
And I'll just say a happy Pride to everyone.
Yeah. There we go.
Y'all, this is my first year anniversary, and on the first time I even opened this podcast up, my first guest was DeAndre Moore, and so I know, you know, he has been there for me and with me, you know, all the way, and I really appreciate you, DeAndre. You are
I appreciate you.
a special child, you know.
Aww. Thank you. I'm so proud of you. I want to say that I'm like, really, you kept this going. Most people don't keep these types of things going, and you've had some really notable guests on your show. So congratulations to you. Like, you have had elected officials, you've had official doctors and COVID experts, you've had financial experts. I've tried to watch as many as I could. My mother will be like, you need to go watch it, talking about credit repair on Deborah's show. You need to go watch it right now. So thank you for you provide the community with so much insight and so much knowledge that we wouldn't have gotten without your show. So thank you so much, Auntie. I appreciate you.
You, love. Thank you. And next week we're gonna celebrate and honor our fathers. And if there's anybody out there that wants to be celebrated on the podcast, inbox me, because you know, I need some fathers, and so we can rock this show next week. And so just inbox me, Deborah Jones. You can go to my Facebook account, or you can go to directors2 at gmail.com, and just tell me that, you know, you would like to come out, and I'm gonna ask some questions like we're doing tonight, and we're gonna just rock it, because we have a lot of great fathers. We always talk about Mother's Day and everything, but we never talk about the greatness of the fathers. You know,
Definitely.
we need to recognize these fathers. You know, everybody not just a sperm donor.
Right, exactly. How to be good fathers. Yes.
Hey, yeah, let's talk about how to be a good father. So,
Yes.
With nothing else to be said, don't forget that we are in this voting trend right now. We
Get those votes in.
Beaumont, Texas, and we have two people running. We have Robin Mouton and we have Raw West. So go out there and exercise your vote. As Black people, we have been struggling, and we need to put the person in her seat. Oh, did I say her seat?
Yeah, look. I'm here for it. There you go.
Table, and just go ahead and vote. The election is going on now from 8 to 5, and then we have the election. We have election day on Juneteenth. Now, y'all, everybody who's Black know what Juneteenth means. So we celebrate. Y'all talking about Pride Month. We celebrate Juneteenth as Black people. Emancipation Day. And what we do that day? We barbecue. So before you put that pit on, before that fire goes up, go out and vote. Go out to the polls and vote. Right, like I said, right now we're in early voting, and it's from 8 to 5. Next Monday and Tuesday will be from 7 to 7, and then on the 19th it will be from 7 to 7. So let's go out and exercise our votes and vote for Robin Mouton.
All right. Yeah, have a good one. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
If I can help anybody that I pass along this way, then I know that my living is not in vain.
You did a job well done. That's it. Thank you, Nathan. Bye.
Bye. Good night, y'all.
Bye, everybody.